Looks like we are now live streaming. Looks like we have about 1 minute before we are ready to start our agenda session. I do have 3:30, Miss Lydia.
I may have the button in a minute. We're good.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Tuesday, October the 6th agenda session. Could I have approval of the minutes, please?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a proper second with no objections. The minutes will stand as recorded. We have a couple of items. Well, I'm sorry, one item under first reading under Public Works and Transportation. And I think Councilman Mitchell, we did cover this item last week in Public Works, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought. Do you have any questions on this? Madam Chair, go ahead and read it into the record.
An ordinance,
Yeah, go ahead.
An ordinance closing and abandoning the southernmost 50 feet of an unopened alley along the 1200 block of Highland Drive as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
All right. Let me arrange my screen where I can see hands. Councilman Ledford.
This is for item G when we get there, sir.
Oh, okay.
Stand by.
All right. Very well. Madam Clerk, we'll move into resolutions. 7A, please.
A resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a premises use agreement with Hixson Youth Athletic Association for the use of the athletic fields and associated buildings located at tax map numbers 100JA006, 100JA007.01, 100JA002.01, and 100JA005 for a term of 4 years.
Questions or comments? Okay. 7B, please.
A resolution authorizing the appointment of Mary Howard as a special police officer for the McCamey Animal Center to do special duty as prescribed herein, subject to certain conditions.
I'm seeing no hands. C.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Lead for America, Incorporated for fellowship services involving placement of 2 recent college graduates interested in immersive leadership development experience for a 24-month period serving municipal government for at least 40 hours per week to upper-level managers and/or elected officials, wherein the city of Chattanooga shall provide training, guidance, and resources necessary for successful completion of the project, with the city's portion in the amount of $63,105.91 for a total amount of $82,386.
All right. Councilman Smith, you had, I think, some concerns or comments about this last week. I know Ms. Johnson is on the call with us. If you would need some explanation.
Actually, I got everything answered that I had questions about, Mr. Chair. I'm good to go.
Okay. All right. Very well.
Thank you.
I have one question, if you don't mind, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman Moses.
It does say and/or elected officials. There's only one elected official, I think, over in the other building. So who's assigning the projects? And is there any way to utilize some of this very probably important resource on any projects that this council would like some help on, research-wise, or moving forward with something that we've had some troubles with in the past?
Let me bring in Chief of Staff and let him answer those questions. Miss Lydia, would you bring in Carrie Hayes, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilman, it's a great question. We would be happy to talk to you about that. We've got 2 outstanding individuals who have joined our office under Candy's supervision, who are working right now specifically on projects related to some economic recovery planning for when we emerge from the pandemic, and another item that's building on some work the Women's Council did about consumer financial protection. But they've got capacity. They're terrific. I look forward to introducing you, and certainly ideas or projects where you might want us to lend them and their brain power. We would certainly love to talk to you about.
Okay, well, I'd like to open up that conversation, Chairman, if possible, maybe for the council to start maybe thinking about some projects we've had on the back burner. Maybe we could utilize these great resources. And Carrie, I appreciate you willing to work with us and maybe loan them out for a little while. But I think this would be a great opportunity to maybe take care of some business that we've had, like I said, on the back burner for a while now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other, Mr. Hayes, Ms. Johnson does have her hand raised. Would you like to bring her in?
Sure.
Okay. Miss Lydia, bring Candy Johnson in, please.
Yes, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, Ms. Johnson.
Hello, thank you
There we
all
go.
for the LFA contract and work that we're doing. We have some dynamic talent that we have been engaging over the course of a couple of months. To Carrie's point about engaging them, we do have a scope of work that they have to address those things that were listed in there. They interviewed based on the project plan or proposal that we submitted to LFA. So as long as those projects that you have in mind fall under upward economic mobility or economic recovery work that aligns, so I would be happy to work directly with you and our fellows on that as I supervise their work. But they have a lot of great data that they've collected. They really pulled apart the report that Carol Burrs' team with the Mayor's Women's Council put together for predatory lending and those types of things. So lots of resources, and we're happy to help you in any of those areas.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Candy.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Hayes or Ms. Johnson? Looks like Ms. Lydia's already excused Mr. Hayes. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. All right, Ms. Lydia.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's read 7D, please.
A resolution confirming the mayor's appointment of Donna Harrison to the Stadium Corporation Board with a term expiring June 29th, 2023.
Questions or concerns? All right. E, please.
A resolution to amend resolution number 30155 for Clean Co-Construction of Tennessee Incorporated relative to contract number S15016-201 East Lake Park Water Quality Improvement Project to include the contingency amount of $110,594.34 for a revised amount not to exceed $2,440,368.52.
Councilman Oglesby, you good, sir?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm good. I did have a question last week. Mr. Hollins was able to answer it, and I'm good with that. Thank you.
Okay, very well. 7F, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with Reflection Riding Arboretum and Nature Center for the development and implementation of growing resilient neighborhoods in order to jointly facilitate with the city the replanting of native trees following the devastation of the April 13th, 2020 tornadoes for a total budget amount of $25,535.
Questions or comments? I think we went over this as well, didn't we, Mr. Chair? Councilman Mitchell. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and read G. I think Councilman Ledford had some comments regarding G.
A resolution waiving fees charged by the Land Development Office for peak attenuation control, TSS, and stormwater infiltration requirements for certain nonprofit religious educational institutions and non-insured residential properties being redeveloped in any area in Chattanooga due to the Easter Sunday, April 12th, 2020 tornado damage, which will expire on or before December 31st, 2021.
Vice Chair, we're picking up some noise from something.
It's coming through somebody's mic as best I can tell, sir.
Okay.
It may be mine. I'm getting ready to mute myself.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to let the council know that I will be asking for a 1-week deferral tonight on this item. And to let you know that if you ever want to get MTAS or TDEC involved on any piece of legislation, go ahead and put it on the agenda. That's a sure way to get a Sure way to
A
get their
reaction?
attention and get a review
Yeah.
back with comments.
There you
So
go.
that's the new secret.
Okay.
There's some feedback from our MTAS attorneys and also some comments from TDEC regarding a certain part of this. We still will be able to use the crux or the core of what I was hoping to do which was be able to rebuild back under the previous stormwater regulations. That seems to be intact. We have a little bit of an issue, it looks like, with some previous ordinance concerning fees and LDO. So I think the core of it's still intact, and working with Phil on this. And I think if he's if he wants to chime in and say anything, Phil, am I hitting all cylinders for you?
Yes, sir. We've had quite a bit of comments. We'll try to help you get that resolved here between now and next week.
Okay, I still think the core of what we're trying to accomplish is doable, but we did hear back, so I think that's the way it works now. So I will
All
be
right.
asking for a 1 week deferral. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's go ahead and read H, please, ma'am.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Transportation to enter into an agreement with Shift Transit for operation of the Bike Chattanooga system on behalf of the city of Chattanooga for a 1-year renewal at no cost to the city per resolution number 29223.
Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted the council to know tonight, I will be asking or moving for a 1-week deferral. CDOT is still working out a couple of details, and they are not quite ready for it to go. We'll probably get a re-presentation of this. We had one last week, but in the next meeting next week, Mr. Bailey will share some more details with us before we vote.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Councilman Mitchell, Councilman Ledford's out an old hand, sir.
I'm sorry, sir. Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Apology.
All right, moving on to purchasing. Council, would you pull up your purchases for tonight? And let me know if you have any questions or concerns about any of the items listed for this evening's purchases. I have heard or seen nothing through email through the week. And at this time, I'm seeing no hands as well. Okay, if you would go to your October 13th agenda. Are there any items there? Councilman Gilbert.
Yeah, on the purchasing, you was talking about the new version, not the old version, correct?
Well, sir, all I have is what is in my council folder. What?
And you should get an email from Nicole that said it's been changed, updated.
Okay. Have you got a question or concern about that new and updated version?
I like the new and updated version.
Okay, very well. Now to the October 13th agenda. Any questions or comments, concerns? I am seeing no hands, and I'm assuming you have looked over the October the 13th agenda. Okay. Future considerations.
Mr. Chair, I've got a question.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, sir. There's several items under human resources. One in particular dealing with renewing an agreement or entering into an agreement with Marathon Health, who has been providing services to us, wellness services, for quite some time. I'd like to request, if it is okay with you, if we go ahead and have a committee to cover these items, a human resources committee, and again, specifically the Marathon Health, possibly even having them come and present to us. It's always good to hear how our employees are benefiting from, one of the best services we could possibly provide to them, which is with healthcare that the city provides. I'd be very interested in hearing an update. It's been a while since we got one.
Are you good with the 20th on that?
That would be perfect.
Councilman Gilbert?
Yeah, is there any question that we need to address on this, Mr. Smith or Vice Chair Smith?
Initially, no. We got a presentation from Marathon Health not too long ago when we were talking about the contracts, and they gave us a lot of detail as far as the number of employees that have been seen, how we're dealing with retirees as well, and their dependents in some cases, and even pharmacies on here too was one of these items. And I just like an update from them on how it's going, an update on, I mean, it's a $2.6 million contract. I know it doesn't say renewal, so it seems like it is a new one. I know there was an issue before when we were contracting this out and whether it had gone out to bid, and it did, who we ended up with. And I just think it'd be a good idea to have them come and give us an update on the services they're doing. It was great. I mean, they had if I'm not mistaken, the employee rating was like 97%, I believe. So I'd like to hear how it has been since that last report, sir.
Councilman, there's also an item dealing with retirees as well. You just want to include all of those items in the committee report? I
think that'd be great. My main issue is just to hear, the latest update on Marathon and how our employee reviews are going of their services and for this that we're providing to everybody.
All right, Councilman Gilbert, are you good with a HR committee meeting on the 20th?
Let me get with Ms. Beverly and make sure that this company can be available, so I'll get back with you on it.
Okay, all right. Let's try to arrange it for the 20th, sir, if we can.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. And this is, I believe, due on November 3rd, according to the language on the future consideration, sir. So if we can have it in committee on the 20th and then on the agenda on the 27th, that gives us enough time to pass this so that it is in place in time.
Okay. Very well. Councilman Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to go back up to Economic and Community Development. I'm a little confused. The first bullet, resolution approving short-term vacation rental application number located at 62 East 17th Street. If I'm not mistaken, that was part of a conversation last week. It might even be the one that they withdrew. First of all, I'm not sure of the wording, resolution approving. I mean, generally this would be a hearing. So
should be a resolution considering a short-term vacation rental, I guess.
Okay, all right, that solves my problem. Thank you.
Okay. Let me bring in Mr. Beelan. I noticed he has his hands up. I want to see if he can shed some light on one of these two items. Mr. Beelan?
Hey, Council.
Good afternoon.
Hi, that is a third application for a short-term vacation rental, Councilman Mitchell, in the same location as the other two.
All right, so but the word approving should not be there, right?
Mr. Beelan, can we change that to considering?
Sure.
A resolution
Yes,
considering?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're
All right. You good, Mr. Councilman Mitchell?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilman Oglesby?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I want to go to Economic and Community Development,
Okay.
bullet point 4, regarding the Tivoli Foundation lease. I would like to have, if it pleases, to have an ECD meeting next Wednesday, October the 13th, so they can present and answer any question we may have regarding this item.
Well, sir, you're the committee chair. If you're ready for a committee, I am.
Well, I am ready. So
Okay.
I'd like to have one next Tuesday at our 3:30 meeting.
Okay. Ms. Campbell, can you make sure that that gets on our agenda for next week? ECD committee concerning the Tivoli lease.
The Tivoli
Okay.
Foundation lease.
Yep. All right, very well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you. All right, so apropos of my previous conversation, this says administrative items for on notice for future consideration. Did you say something, Mr. Chair?
No, I'm listening.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're not to assume these are coming up any particular time, or are we to assume that they're coming up in 3 weeks?
Well, let me note.
And let me tell you why I'm asking that. Because if that's true, then I would like several of these items that apparently are coming up under economic development to be reviewed so that we
Okay.
have knowledge of them ahead of time. Same thing, like the thing about human resources. That was great because Councilman Smith said, well, we're not sure when they're coming up. We better have a committee meeting. That's the kind of thing I was talking about.
Well, let me note on just below administrative items on notice for future considerations. It does have listed 1020 agenda items and beyond. So I think it
Correct,
is.
but we don't know which ones are going to be on the 1020. That's my point.
Okay, that's true. Okay, noted. All right, you good, Councilwoman?
Yeah, as long as we know and are educated ahead of time.
Sure. All right, Councilman Gilbert.
Yeah, going back to the next week agenda, on resolution C, can you give me a little more information on that one?
Well, hold on. I guess we'll have to switch back. That's for the next week's agenda?
Right. Oh, I can get it next week if it's a problem right now.
Well, which item, Councilman?
C.
Under
Economic development. Economic and community development.
Oh, we're under resolutions then.
Wrestler, yes.
Okay. I tell you what, since that's economic and community development, Councilman Oglesby, could you include that as well in the presentation or in the committee hearing?
I'll be happy to, sir. I think typically that's what we'll do. So yeah, it'll be part of my committee meeting next week.
Will that be good, Councilman Gilbert?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other items for future consideration? And I'm assuming all the hands that I have up are old hands.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you get out of there.
Okay. Okay, we have no departmental reports this afternoon. We do have a planning and zoning committee meeting that we need to go into. Councilman Ledford.
Yes, sir.
See no other business that we need to address at this time, so I'm going to turn the chair over to you for planning and zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Welcome everyone to Planning and Zoning. The meeting you've been waiting for all month, I know. Can I get a minute, motion for a minute approval, please? Okay, thank you. I've seen no objections. The minutes will stand. Ms. Lydia, will you go ahead and bring in Mr. John Bridger for me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Afternoon.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Fantastic. You ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's start us off with next week on our agenda for Tuesday, October 13th. Ordinances on first reading, 6A, please.
I will do. Can everybody see my screen?
Can see it.
And everybody can hear me, I'm assuming. Okay,
Yep.
So I'll keep running through. So this is a request to rezone from R1 to RT1, which is advanced for me here. Just 1 second, make sure it's advanced. There you go. For a proposed development consisting of 12 units. This is located in the Middle Valley area. Here is a slide showing the location just south of the Shelby Circle intersection with Middle Valley Road. Currently, the zoning in the area is predominantly R1. You do have an R4 node up there to the north, and you got a C2 zone a little bit further to the south. There has been some zoning history. Some of you may recall there was an R4 request just to the north of this site about a year ago that was withdrawn at City Council that had some neighborhood opposition. You can see there's another case a little bit much earlier in 1984 that was approved for an R4 special zone at that intersection. If you look at the land use patterns of this area, you can see you do have single family residential detached to the rear, to the south. You do have that office warehousing use a little bit further south. You got some warehousing and multifamily at that intersection that I referred to the north. When we look at the adopted Hixson community land use plan, it recommends low density residential for this location, which means it's predominantly single family residential with some exceptions for townhomes, patio homes, and 2-family dwellings. So looking at the plan and the land use patterns and the zoning, staff really didn't have an issue with the use, but we did want to constrain the zone based on what was proposed to make sure that it's compatible with the adjacent residential. So we recommended approval subject to a limit of a maximum of 4 dwelling units per acre, which is consistent with what your maximum R1 residential density is, and limited the uses of the townhouses to just where they were proposing. And I'll pull up the site plan real quick. You can see, give me 1 second. Where are we at? Oop, what's going on? Not sure why it did that. Give me a second. Why are you doing that? Okay, I'm gonna close it and reopen it. Just give me a minute. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me skip down. Just so you can see based on the site plan submitted that there's several parcels. There's 3, but they're proposing most of the townhomes to be on that northern parcel with some kind of a park or dog park. And so what we would want to do is basically create a condition for townhouses only for that one parcel, so that this basically the rest of this would be left as a park. But let me go back out. Let me go back up to the PC meeting. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. Planning Commission did recommend approval with a different condition. They actually increased the maximum density to 12 units per acre. So to kind of give you an idea of what that means, again, their original proposal was 12 dwelling units. If you had that condition of 12 dwelling 12 dwelling units per acre, it actually double the yield to 24 dwelling units from 12. So both staff and PC recommend approval, but with different conditions.
Very good. Thank you, John. Vice Chairman, I can't see if you have your hand raised or not. Did you want to chime in, sir?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Hey,
sir.
John, considering we do have a situation here where we show approval by planning as one and approval by staff as another.
Yes.
I mean, walk me through how we as a council are supposed to determine which set of conditions are most appropriate for this to know which one of these should be moved. I mean, is there?
I was looking at the plan policy. I would say, the staff recommendation, because the plan policy, allows for mixing of residential types, but try to keep the density compatible with what's in the area. What the applicant proposing is as 12 units would actually have a density of about 6 dwelling units per acre. So, one option to think about, Councilman Smith, is if you wanted to basically limit it to what they're proposing, which is essentially 12 units, you could make that as a condition. I think the idea here was to keep the density compatible with what's around it. And so staff felt like, to do that, you need to have some condition on total density. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you, John.
Okay.
John, it actually says in here that the ordinance is subject to condition of maximum of 12 dwelling units per acre. So that'd be 24 units, right? And
Yep.
your staff recommendation was 4 units per acre. So
That's right.
Quite a bit difference.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And if I remember the conversation clearly enough, it was based on what the ordinance already allows density wise, and staff
That's right.
recommended a reduction in density to meet the area.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilman, Vice Chairman, does that help you to this point, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me check for any other hands. While I have that screen up, it's a little difficult. So I see no other hands.
Okay.
Very good. John, you ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
All right. 6D, please.
Yeah, the next request is to rezone from R1 to R5 and R1 and R5 to RTZ zone for a small lot, single family detached residential development, basically consisting of 33 units on this particular property. So again, it's detached, single family, but they're small lots. Here you can see the location of the site. This is off of Boy Scout Road, just off of not far from the intersection of Boy Scout Road and Hixson Pike. The zoning, you do see, while it's predominantly R1, you have a PUD to the north that includes townhouses already in it. And then you've got mostly R1 with some spot R5s. Remember, R5 lets you do mobile homes. This area was, if you may recall, when it was annexed, was later rezoned from A1 to R1 and R5 to bring it back into the city zoning kind of setup after following annexation. The actual PUD to the north was rezoned back in 1991, and it did include 32 townhouse units. So there's some precedent for a mix of housing types in this area. You look at the land use development pattern, you do see a mix of small lot, larger lot, and townhouse development. So there's already kind of a blend of units in this area from a use perspective. Again, the Hixson North River Plan recommends low density residential in this area. So it's meant to be predominantly single family with exceptions made for townhouses, patio homes, and 2-family dwellings if the density is compatible. So, again, we looked at the density of the area. That townhouse development you saw across the street was about 7.6 dwelling units per acre. The plan also talks about trying to provide some different housing forms for both first-time home buyers and senior citizens. So we saw the overall recommendation as consistent with the policy, but wanted to add some conditions to be sure both the nature of the use was consistent and the density. So actually I say the nature of the use. So we had a condition limited to single family detached residential uses only was the condition. At Planning Commission, there was no opposition. And they concur with staff's recommendation to approve subject to single family detached residential.
Very good. Vice Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, that's great. That's exactly how I wanted to see it. So thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Vice Chair. I see no other hands. So we're going to move on along to 6C, John.
Okay. This is a request to rezone from basically from R1 to R5 for a single wide manufactured home. This property is located just south of Bonnie Oaks along Austin Drive. You can see the Reserve Center over here in the upper right. So it's right before you kind of cross over and head down toward Enterprise South. They're requesting R5 for a single wide mobile home. As you can see, there's already some R5s on this street. You have one here and one to the north. You also have some R3, and then you have R1 further south. There's some history, but not recent history. You can see some of those R5s were rezoned back in 1983 and 1987. If you look at the land use pattern, again, it shows already there's a mix of housing types. You got some single wides and some single family detached on the street. Again, in the Highway 58 Community Land Use Plan, it prescribes low density residential, which is intended for single family dwellings with a density of 1 to 4 units per acre. So again, from a staff perspective, again, the proposed zone based on the existing land use and zoning cases on the street, it was appropriate. We recommended to approve. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. Planning Commission concurred with staff's recommendation to approve.
Thank you, John. I don't see your hand, Dr. Burrs. Would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I sure would.
Thank you.
John, this is the first, I'm not sure how I missed that. When I saw it on the agenda today, I don't know how I missed it at Planning Commission. So you're saying there's a mobile home on this already?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's out of compliance?
Well, there's 2 single wides already in this area. This is a vacant lot. There's not one there. I'm not aware of there being a mobile home on this site already. I know there's across the street and just to the north of this property already 2 existing.
So help me understand the thinking.
Well, typically,
behind
yeah, the way we've done it with yeah, particularly with single wide mobile homes, and this is the same in the county. You know, you typically want, if you've already got some on the block, then it's not like you're introducing a new use. There's already some of that there. So again, it's another form of single family. As you know, there's a lot of housing, affordable housing needs in the city, and this is an affordable housing option. If you already got some of that housing type on this block, this gives the opportunity for somebody to have that use and be, again, it's part of the, it's not on a street that's all single family residential. It has a mix of mobile homes and single family already.
Okay, I think I would feel more comfortable about this. Mr. Dixon and the Dixon family properties, I've not spoken with them at all.
Okay, I can let them know to reach out to you.
Because otherwise, I would want to defer or deny. There are other uses that can meet the need, and I'm trying to figure out the y'all's thinking there.
Okay.
Since it's a vacant lot, it could be tiny homes. I mean, it could be other things. Those people around there are fighting to bring their property up, and
Right.
I'm just trying to think you're thinking there.
Well, I mean, it's another affordable housing topic. All folks opt for that because, as you know, construction costs are going up, and it's a way for folks to get a house at a certain price point that they can afford. That's my understanding.
So we're thinking about taking these properties and building mobile home parks? What?
It's not a mobile home park. It's a single.
I get it. I get it.
But again, I would say the nuance here is we're not talking about this on any residential area. It's only on those streets where you've already got a mix of mobile homes and single family on the same block.
Okay, I would certainly love to hear from the Dixons and see what they, there's a difference between hauling in a mobile home or taking a mobile home, which a lot of people do, and fix it up as attractive housing for people. I get the need. I'm just wondering,
I'll have them reach out to you.
Yeah, I'm curious as to that decision.
Sure.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Burrs. See no other comments, John, but let me ask you to reiterate, there was no opposition to this at Planning Commission that I remember, and letters were sent out to
their
every property
association
owner
reps and a sign. Yes, sir.
And a sign. Okay.
Well, if I may, people can't come at 1 o'clock during the day, and I'm very familiar with the people that live around Austin Drive.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
they're really trying to upgrade stuff. So that's all. No more comments.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. All right. I'm seeing no other hands.
Okay.
Unless, let's see, I'm juggling this screen here, John, so just give me a second. All right, very good. Seeing no other hands. Let's go on to 6D, please.
Sure. This is a request, this is a request to rezone from R1 to R3 residential zone for a proposed low to moderate income housing development for individual houses. Again, single family residential, but basically having multiple of those units on the same lot. And so basically the total number of proposed units is 29. This property is located in the Cedar Hill community, between 13th, 17th Avenues and just north of 48th Street. The zone is R1. You can see you've also got commercial zoning across the street to the west. It's about 2 blocks off of Rossville Boulevard. Looking at the zoning history of the area, back in 2004, this area was downzoned to R1 as part of the follow-up to the Rossville Boulevard Community Plan. You can see that this area was included in that downzoning. That's basically the history of this immediate area. If you look at the land uses, you do have single family detached to the north, the east, the south, but you got commercial and some single family across the street to the west. You can see the site again right here. The the adopted Rossville Boulevard plan recommends, again, single-family homes being the predominant use with some exceptions for townhouses, patio homes, and two-family dwellings if density is compatible. And the reason they're having to request this particular zone tool, even though they're doing single-family, if you have multiple units on a lot, the only zone that lets you do multiple units on a lot is R3, and that's why they're having to request that zone. And again, if you look at the plan recommendation, that as long as you can have a mix of other housing types, as long as the overall density is compatible. We didn't have an issue with the use, but we did want to make sure that we constrained the zone in terms of what could happen on the site. So we just basically recommend a condition that you limit it to 29 single family detached residential structures only. So cannot be multi-unit, be single family detached for that site. At Planning Commission, there was no opposition. Planning Commission concurred with staff's recommendation to approve with that condition.
Very good. Councilman Oglesby, you want to chime in?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've seen the full scope of what this division of this area going to be. I have heard no oppositions, and I'm good to go. I'm good to go.
All right. Thank you, sir. Seeing no other hands in the queue. John, you want to move on to 6E, please?
Yes. This is a request to rezone. This is in the same, actually, this is in East Lake, just north of where we saw that prior case. And they're requesting a rezone from M1 to UGC for a townhouse development.
Mm-hmm.
They're proposing 20 townhouse units at this location. Okay. If you look at the site, it's in the 2600 block of East 40th Street. It's just south of the East Lake YFD Center, which you can see at the top of your screen up here. If you look at the zoning of the area, it has a predominantly M1 with bordered by R2 and C2 zones. There had been some rezoning activity. You had some areas that were zoned from R2 to M1, you see up here to the north, as well as on this side, rezoned to M1 from R2. Okay. Look at the land use. This particular tract of property is vacant. You do have warehouse, industrial. I believe this is like an auto repair body shop here. You got some warehouse industrial to the north and to the west, and commercial across the street to the east. The Rossville Boulevard Community Plan recommends light and medium business mixes for this site, which is described as predominantly neighborhood convenience, commercial uses, as well as offices, residential, and similar uses. So looking at the land use pattern and the plan recommendations, staff felt like the zone that was requested, UGC, fits in with that description of the policy. We recommended to approve. There was opposition to this case. We had individual come to the meeting and express a concern about if this goes residential, how that'll affect existing businesses in terms of complaints about compatibility. That was discussed quite at length at Planning Commission. We did have a split vote on this. I think the vote was 7-4 to approve the request. I think that the two perspectives that were discussed at Planning Commission, one was, not approving something that might be the detriment of existing businesses in the area. I think the other side of that was, well, this individual is taking the risk to, to develop in this area that's needed some redevelopment for quite a long time. It's consistent with the plan, because at the end of the day, always remind ourselves we're approving a zone and not a project. And the zone, from staff's perspective, is consistent with what the plan is recommending. So again, both bodies recommend approval, but there was some discussion and there was opposition.
Very good. Councilman Oglesby, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I was actually at that Planning Commission meeting, and I've been in contact with the developer and many of the neighbors in the surrounding area. And, with the exception of what the business owners were brought to the table, which I value a lot, and I'll be having some more conversation between now and when we vote on it. This potentially could be a good project for this area, considering they're trying to transition it into a more residential friendly, people friendly, walkability friendly areas. So I'm good with moving forward with this, and I'll be having conversations between now and the time it comes before us for vote.
Very good. Thank you, sir. John, let me add in a side note. When you talked about the conversation, this is the opposite conversation than we normally have. This was actually this time a reversal. The business was actually worried about
Yes.
itself and the resident. So one of the things I would recommend, and also note, we discussed at Planning Commission, was that the developer make sure that everyone who moves there understand what is around them. The business owners do not need any undue burden from people complaining after they built something in the middle of an M1 field, so to speak. So I think that that it's very important for the developer to make sure that that information is relayed to the residents, because that would be the opposite of what we normally discuss. But
yes,
definitely worth noting in this case.
Yeah, I totally agree with, because that was a conversation we had at Planning Commission, and I totally agree with you, Mr. Chair, on this matter. So yeah, we'll move forward and see how it plays out.
Very good. I no doubt you will handle it with absolute professionalism, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Seeing no other hands, John, are we ready to move on to 6F?
yes. Give me a second. Okay. This is a request to lift, actually to rezone from, sorry, get my notes right, from
M1.
R1 and C2 and M1 to UGC for proposed townhome development.
Right.
This property is located in East Lake in the 3700 block of Clio Avenue, just one block. You can see it abuts Rossville Boulevard. If you look at the zoning pattern of the area, you got M1 along Rossville Boulevard, you got some C2 and R1 to the back. You can see here that there's some zoning history. This property was rezoned to C2 back in 1988. There's also a UGC that's a little bit further south from the site that was rezoned back in 2011. If you look at the land use pattern, I think we all know about Rossville Boulevard. It's predominantly a mix of commercial, warehousing, and industrial. But when you get off of that street, it begins to transition quickly to residential. And so that's kind of what we're looking at staff, and we look at the plan recommendations and transition, how we think about the back half of this site. The plan recommends both for the front part, a heavy business mix. So that's described as, again, that's along Boston Boulevard, commercial, office, residential, and light warehousing. When you get back behind it, it recommends medium density residential, which is described as single family townhouses, 2, 3, and 4 unit multifamily. I think the overall development program, which is townhouses, is appropriate. We just want to make sure, again, because UGC is a wide open zone, that there's some conditions to make sure it's compatible with those residential uses to the rear. So we recommended conditions basically for this back half, that'll be residential uses only. So even though it's zoned UGC, it can only be residential uses, and that you would limit the height to no more than 2.5 stories or 35 feet, which is that's standard for R1. So that way, UGC lets you have 4 stories, and we're trying to make sure that there's compatibility with the houses on this block. So we're recommending that it be residential uses only on the back half with some restrictions on building height. At Planning Commission, there was no opposition, and Planning Commission concurred with staff's recommendation to approve with those conditions.
Very good. Thank you, John. Councilman Oglesby, you want to jump in?
And that's the site plan.
You'll need to unmute your mic, sir.
No, I'm good. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, John. Let's move on to item D. We'll get out of 7 and move to District 8.
Yes, sir. This is a request to lift conditions of an existing R4 zone property so it could be used as a school. The property is located at 1912 South Willow Street in the Oak Grove community. And I believe it's currently a charter school, if I'm not mistaken, or desired to be used for that purpose. The surrounding zoning, as you can see, beyond the site is R2 zoning. You've got some R4 and M3 to the south. This slide describes the zoning history. You can see it's kind of gone through several iterations. The last time it was rezoned was in 2008, and it had a condition of the use as elderly housing only. So this might be also a good footnote for future reference when we look at conditions on zoning requests. When we limit the use to that particular use only, then it creates issues downstream in terms of if it changes to a school or something else. And so because they're looking at it for it to be used as a school, they're not complying with the conditions as adopted in 2008. So again, if you look at the land uses, you can see that you get single family detached to the north, behind the school to the east, across the street to the west, and to the south. The Area 3 plan or River to Ridge Community Plan recommends campus for this location. So that would support institutions, offices, research facilities, and multifamily housing. So again, staff felt like, again, the request was consistent, but basically limited to school uses only. Planning Commission, there was no opposition. They concur with staff's recommendation to limit the school uses only.
Very good. Thank you, John. Councilman Byrd, I know you want to jump in on this.
Just truly excited. I can't wait to see the outcome of this this amazing thing. I mean, it's great now, but I know it's going to be something even amazing in the near future. This is a great place, and kids love it, and I love it, and I can't wait to see it. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Councilman. What a great opportunity in your district.
Awesome.
All right, John, we are moving into a couple of steps. That will conclude our agenda for zoning cases. So we want to, you want to handle the resolutions?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Sure.
So I wanted to follow up. If you remember, we had that RTZ zoning amendment back in August, and that was when, you know, I was halfway between here and California. Glad to be back in Chattanooga. But I know there was some question about the RTZ text amendment, and I thought I would like to be able to address that. To be clear again about the why for that request. First thing I want to point to, even if you look at today's agenda, did you notice how many zoning requests were not your typical single family residential? We saw several that were multi-unit. The housing needs are changing, and you're seeing more infill development that features small lot residential or several units on the same lot. The problem we have with our zoning code is we don't have a good zone. RTZ is our closest zone that's residential in nature that begins to let you have smaller lot, detached single family, or but currently does not let you have more than one unit per lot. And so you may recall back in August, during our planning and zoning committee, that time I kind of walked through the recommendations and why we're trying to make a change to the RTZ zone so that we don't have situations. You may recall, I'm bringing to your attention, you remember Oak Grove, where we zoned about half the neighborhood to C3 with conditions. And the reason, and as you know, C3 is a downtown zone. It's really meant for downtown. The reason we had to use C3 was because the applicant was trying to mix both small lot, single family detached, and multi-unit on the same block. And you cannot do that with any of our zone tools. You might recall another case in the Highland Park community. Matt Lyle was the applicant on this one, where he was doing a 4-unit development on a residential street in the middle of Highland Park. Cannot do this in RTZ. So we ended up rezoning this part of the block to UGC, urban general commercial, in the middle of a residential neighborhood, which from a planning perspective doesn't make sense. It's a bad precedent to set. So what we're trying to do with the RTZ amendment is to do a couple things. Knowing that it's a tool that's used throughout the city, that we would only apply this amendment to the urban overlay, which is those parts of the city that has the grid, that has the more urban type lot pattern. The second thing is that this amendment would only apply to new rezoning requests. So if you have an existing RTZ zone property, this would not, you would not have this added flexibility. And the reason we do that is because we know folks who have been part of prior cases where property's been rezoned have expectations that it's going to be single family detached, and we don't want to mess with that. So the idea was this would be only for new cases going forward. It would provide standards for lot sizes, because another issue we've come across is there's a 12 units per acre density cap on RTZ. Well, some of these small lot single family residential, it could be 16 or 18 density and not comply with that 12 unit ceiling. But we also want to basically allow up to 4 units on a lot in RTZ as part of a rezoning request. So again, all this does is create the option. So, and if somebody wanted to apply for what you just saw on the screen, this kind of development, instead of rezoning this to UGC in the middle of a neighborhood, you would have RTZ as the tool. So I'll stop there to see if there's any questions from council about this request.
John, let me look for some hands here. And I am seeing no hands. And I would like to go ahead and ask the council.
I've got a hand up.
Oh, sorry, Chairman. Juggling a small window there. There you go. I see you. Chairman Henderson, please.
Thank you, sir. John and Councilman Ledford, Chair Ledford, I was in favor of this to begin with. I think it would be a helpful tool, particularly the fact that we're confining it to the urban overlay. I, for one, would be willing to get this placed back on the agenda.
I would like to see that.
With the consent of some other council folks as well.
Chairman, if you don't mind, I do have a hand from Councilman Mitchell, if you'd like me to follow up with.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Councilman Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One comment and one question. The comment is when are you going to get the urban overlay map correct? It's still incorrect. And the question would be, we have a consultant coming in to help us solve all kinds of problems that we have in the lack of tools in the toolbox for zoning. And what is the hurry to go ahead and do this right now when we're just a few, 4 to 8, let's say 4, 7 or 8 months away from new tools?
I guess the risk would be, as you know, we have these cases that keep coming up. And as you know how, we were working at ADU one time that still hasn't been adopted. So I'm trying to get something in place so at least we got a tool to work with that keeps us, because here's our, I guess, our trade-offs. We either do nothing, which means we're going to continue to spot zone middle of neighborhood UGC and sometimes C3 with conditions to wait until we get the fix. Or we go ahead at least amend this now as an interim tool to get, because as you know how these things go in terms of creating new zoning tools, it could be 4 months, it could be a year. I would like it to be 4 to 6 months, but that track record hasn't worked out so well. So I'm trying to get something in place so we don't do any more damage in terms of zoning precedent in the middle of neighborhoods, having commercial zones used as a tool for a small lot residential development.
Well, another option of doing no more damage is to do nothing. And so I still don't fit, and this is just me personally and 8 other council people. You didn't convince me of any urgency.
That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Chairman Henderson, is that an old hand?
That's a new hand, sir.
That's a new hand. If you don't mind, John, let me ask you real quick. Is there a time stamp you can put on this or a sunset that would ensure that this was indeed a temporary tool?
It's noted. I don't think you, I'll defer to Phil on this. I don't know that you can de facto sunset an ordinance. I mean, Phil, I'd like to get your thoughts on that as it relates to, because once you developed, I mean, I guess you could be grandfathered in once it sunsets, but it's a little strange.
It's a little awkward because you're creating a development use that is allowed here, and then suddenly you would be taking it away. That's one of the concerns that we've discussed on a couple of other matters here recently.
Well, that's the definition of government, isn't it? Anyways, Chairman Henderson.
Well, so that creates a little bit of a conundrum for me, because that was my question about putting the sunset clause in there until we got the consultants to give us some better tools.
Let me tell you what you could do. Let me throw this out. I think, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong. Once the new tool is created, council can go back in and amend the RTZ to take it out.
Sure.
So you do have that option, yes. So once the new zone is created, as part of that process, you could also do a text amendment to take this out.
But what's the difference in that and a sunset clause?
Yeah.
Because you're specifically creating a vested right in a property owner to be able to develop in accordance with that plan. And if they submit a plan based upon this particular type of use in the overlay zone that's allowed on there, that would be the problem. And once that's submitted, then it couldn't be taken away without paying for it.
I'm not sure you explained the difference between a sunset clause and just amending it to take it out of the code.
You're in a amending to take it out of the code. You're simply redoing your zoning ordinance. You're not specifically saying that this type of use, which we're allowing up until X date, suddenly goes away. That's my concern.
Okay.
So I think we still get there. I think it's just the method about how we get there. I think, and another way you could, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, if council clearly declares as part of its intent that once the new tool is created, that we will be coming back and amending this to, that way the public's on notice that there will be a future text amendment that would be taking it back out once the new tool is in place.
That helps put people on notice. It's also an issue of I guess, do you have a rush to make sure that everybody comes in before the time period goes? But I mean, definitely it's a lot better to actually give them a time period as to when that might occur.
Mr. Chairman,
I don't think I'm any clearer than you are right now.
I guess, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time. I guess I would like to hear Councilman Mitchell's concerns about placing this on the agenda and his concerns for these proposed changes.
Councilman?
Okay, well, my concerns is it's creating, it almost looks like a solution looking for a problem to me. My concern, and it doesn't really perfect anything. It's just the best we got, and we're going to throw it up against the wall and see what happens. And I've seen RTZ go awry, probably not as often as UGC. I'll give you that one, John. UGC can, tornado out of control at any moment. But RTZ's been known when you get out of a certain area and you're trying to protect yourself by being part of the urban overlay, it can go sideways too. I've seen it. So what the part that causes me to pause is when Mr. Bridger just said it could be a year from now. I mean, when we voted on something, it was told us it would be probably 5 to 7 months. And that's already been a month or more ago. So if we're still looking at something that's a year away, then I have pause about my objection, and we hope for the best probably. So I hope I somewhat explained myself, but the main thing I was trying to say is that this is no cure at all. This is just another Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid. I agree with that. It's a Band-Aid.
But I have paused that if we're really a year out from having something new and helpful, then perhaps we should go and put it on the agenda. And worst case scenario, it gets 1 no vote, or maybe even I go for it.
Thank you, Councilman. With that being noted, I think I'm going to take your advice and just kind of go around the horn and ask each and every member of the council on this committee to give me their place on the agenda, yes or a no. Or how about this? If it's a no, I think We'll just go with that. I'm not hearing anything, so I'm hearing we will go ahead and place this back onto the agenda.
Sure.
Okay. And then we can maybe have a little bit more discussion on it at the time, and we can vote it up or down.
And I'll
Very
be
good.
prepared
John,
to talk
you know
a
what?
little more, and I'll be prepared to talk about what I'm hearing, to be real clear about how council can unwind this if they so choose at a future date, to help clarify those questions around that. I
I
work
think
with Phil
that's
on
a
that.
pretty critical component of this, John.
Yep.
So I definitely want to make sure we
Yep.
understand it, because I'm not quite so clear on how we good call, how we unwind it. So if you'll follow up with that, then, and
Yes, sir.
follow up with Phil. Phil, what do we need to do on our end?
I just need to know which date you want it on the agenda, and then we'll work with it comes forward.
Well,
Let's
probably
do
2
2
weeks.
weeks.
So 2 weeks.
Okay.
20th.
Yes, sir.
All right. John, you have one more update for us?
I think just, I mean, actually speaking of zoning code assessment.
Yeah, why don't you go hit the high points on that, because then
Sure. We actually had some initial meetings with the consultant this week, just with staff, to kind of get them familiar with the territory. They've already talked to LDO. I talked to some of our staff this morning. We'll be doing some stakeholder meetings, either end of October or first week in November. And we definitely have them talk to a few council members. So I will be touching base with, if you have an interest in talking with the consultants, let me know. I know, I think, yeah, so anyway, if you just reach out to me, Ledford, maybe could you be the point of conduit for me, Councilman Ledford, as far as if our folks,
absolutely.
so if folks are interested, just let me know. We'll be happy to set that up. I just want you to know, we also, Karen told me to be sure to tell you all this morning that we did emphasize with the consultants the importance of protecting R1 single family. So I'm here to report that was mentioned loud and clear, so they understand that desire. As you know, Chattanooga is a diverse community, and not every neighborhood's the same, and so they need to understand that. We told them about that. So anyway, we're going to have some stakeholder meetings, both with residents, people who develop both in the suburban and urban areas, who do residential, commercial. We're also going to be talking with folks in the industrial side, because we know there's some issues with our industrial zones. So those will be set up, I would say, more likely the first week of November. I will let you know as an FYI when those are scheduled, just so you're aware that those are taking place. So they'll be working on that. And you know, on the other thing, on the steep slopes piece, the consultants are already looking at that language. I believe Councilman Ledford, I think you forwarded them your contact for the language, and I think they're communicating with them. I will be working side by side with Richard Beeland on some of the other aspects as it relates to the cost for compliance. We're going to be looking at again, taking a sample of 3 or 4 lots, showing different levels of compliance needs to kind of see what the cost might be. I usually call the Goldilocks principle, you know, cold, warm, hot, you know, if we have a little bit of compliance needed versus a little more than a lot, what does that look like? So anyway, we're working on that, and we're shooting for, again, certainly by that first week in November, to have a report back to you, both from the consultants and the cost budget side. That's kind of what we're shooting for.
Very good. Thanks, John. Hopefully by Thanksgiving, we can put something in that this town has never seen and actually is helpful. So, John, I think that concludes us for this committee meeting. There we go. I think this concludes us for this committee meeting, Mr. Chairman. Do we have anything else we need to cover before we adjourn to 6?
I do. Well, we need to have a brief
Attorney-client
privilege.
Very good. So I will go ahead and close us out of planning and zoning today, and we'll log back in for our attorney-client.
All right. See everybody back in just a minute.
Thank you.